Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Butterfly Chronicles, a space where I engage with you as we look at anything really that has to do with change, development, personal change, personal growth, personal transformation, any area really that can help us all to be better at who we are and at what we do, can help us to be better connected with our purpose, better connected with God, and better connected with our community, that space, our various communities, which are really the spaces where we should thrive in and where we should also be willing to give back and bless others. So, welcome. I'm Dr. Denise J. Charles, and I will be talking to you today about a very critical area of development. And let me pause here to wish all of you ladies out there happy International Women's Day. We know that we don't just celebrate the day on March 8th, but we look at the entire month of March as a time when we should really focus in on women and our strengths, our triumphs, our challenges even, and the things that we do that make us uniquely the human beings that God has created each of us to be. So, happy International Women's Day, ladies. We know the hashtag this year is Give to Gain. And it is ironic and uncanny for me because as you are going to be hearing a little bit more in time to come as we move on, not necessarily today, but perhaps in some other episodes or for some other content that I will create specifically, there's a new initiative brewing on the horizon, something that has spoken to me quite deeply, something that I felt led by God to work on. And I've shared it with a core group of ladies, and certainly it's going to be open out there for as many ladies as possible to get engaged with. And you'll be hearing a lot more about it very, very soon. And I had not a clue that the hashtag for International Women's Day 2026 was Give to Gain, but it speaks so much into that hashtag. So watch out for what is to come very, very shortly from me and for those who are partnering with me as well. So, what are we going to be talking about today on this edition of the Butterfly Chronicles? Because if you've never been here in this space before, you know I'm a content creator. You know that I do a podcast with my husband, Strong Love Speaks, which speaks specifically to relationships. And this particular one that I'm doing speaks more to ladies. Not that men can't learn from it as well, but it speaks more to ladies in the area of personal change, personal transformation, growth, that type of thing. And I use a lot of the readings from my book, Tonight I'm a Butterfly, Celebrating Seasons of Change, a book that was written some years ago, but a book that is still so much of the information is untapped and so much in it is still very relevant. And this is the book, Tonight I'm a Butterfly, Celebrating Seasons of Change. I won't be reading just from the book, but I'll be sharing some ideas or thoughts that emerged from one of the readings. And yeah, we're going to drill down into it. So let's go. This one today is called Bringing Extraordinary to the Ordinary. Bringing extraordinary to the ordinary. And with each of these readings, I begin with a quote. So I'm just going to read it quickly. And then I'm going to get down into talking about what this particular reading is looking at. It says, don't wait for extraordinary opportunities. Seize common occasions and make them great. Weak men or women wait for opportunities. Strong men or women make them. And this is a quote by Arisen Sweat Marden. So in this reading, I talk a lot about courage. I talk about courage as an admirable human trait that many of us strive to have, which strive to encapsulate it. We admire a lot of the courage that we see in leaders or people who have led causes all over the earth, all over the world. If we think historically, we could go right back to the Bible days, David and Goliath. We can look at people who rose to the occasion, Joseph. These are biblical characters. And then when we come into, the 20th century, we look at people like Anne Frank, a young woman who did a lot to lead, even in her young years. We know the story of Martin Luther King Jr. and all that he did in terms of the civil rights movement. We have Rosa Parks, who refused to get up from her seat, and in so doing really sparked a significant aspect of the civil rights movement. And even here in our own country, Barbados, where I'm from, we've had our own local heroes. We have Sir Garfield Sobers, who's still alive, the greatest cricketer the world has ever seen. We have our own Rihanna as one who has certainly led in her field in terms of entertainment and now in the beauty industry, a billionaire young woman, etc., the first from Barbados or the Caribbean to reach that level of worldwide fame. So we have people like this who are grand, they're out there, they're in the public eye, everybody sees them. Some people aspire to be like them or to lead some great cause or to do something of significance. Because as human beings, we have that desire to make an impact on our worlds, whatever those worlds comprise of. But when we think about the majority of us, we're not necessarily going to reach that level of fame or acclaim. We are just going to be living our lives and from day to day, interacting with our families, interacting with our communities, interacting with the spaces we're working, and so on. But yet, deep in our hearts, we still have that desire to be courageous. We still have that desire to be extraordinary. And if you don't have that desire to be extraordinary, well, that's fine. Not every single person is the same. Some people are content to just, coast, as I like to say, coast on sand, just live their lives and not bother their head about anything much. But for many of us, we do want to make that mark. We do want to be change agents. We want to be the type of people who change a space. We change the people that we interact with. We impact them for change. When I met with a group of ladies recently, one of them made a very I would say startling observation, which I have held there because I always like to learn from other people. I never claim to know everything. And we talk a lot about empowering people. We talk a lot, especially with women, we talk about, empowering other women and so on. But she said something that was really very important that I haven't forgotten. And she said, we can't really empower people. We can provide the tools, we can expose them to tools, we can expose them to areas where they need to grow, we can expose them to the types of information that they need to run with to become empowered themselves. But really and truly, we as individuals must seek to empower ourselves with what is available out there. So whether you're being empowered by what I might say today, or whether you're going to be empowered by something you've read online, or some other video you viewed online, some other content that you've interacted with, or maybe you were in church and you heard some information from your pastor, or you're in counseling or therapy and you heard something from your therapist or your coach, or just a colleague or dear friend who was able to lend you some advice or whatever, you can become empowered based on what you do with the information that you've received. So the onus is not really on the person giving or sharing the information or providing the opportunity. The onus is on you to seize what you need to become empowered. And that really spoke to me, and it is very much linked to what I'm talking about today. This reading, as I said, is bringing extraordinary to the ordinary. So how do we as regular people, or even if you are already in a leadership position, it is still very applicable to you. And I think I said in one of my previous podcasts, I think I did, that being a change agent, I think I'd asked the question, who is your change manager? And the idea of being a change agent or being someone who can catapult others into change is really not dependent on a title. It is not dependent on what someone else calls you. It's not even so much dependent on what someone else sees you as. It's really about you and being honest with yourself, knowing your own value and what you bring to the table in any space that you're in, and living that as an example to others, allowing your life to be that powerful vehicle that can motivate others. And it doesn't mean that you're superhuman, superwoman, superman, or that you know everything, but it is that you seek to live authentically. You live in a space where you're always open to learn from other people, and you are really about giving back. You're really about blessing others. So when I heard this year's hashtag Give to Gain, although I understand where it's coming from, and I can see it very linked to something that, as I said, I'll be sharing with you very, very soon. We don't just want to give to gain. because we want to be positioned in a particular space. But we really give, and as we give, to give, to give, to give, we will gain. We will develop, we will grow. So, what do I mean about bringing extraordinary to the ordinary? I'm going to share with you, I think there are eight principles or eight key areas. Let me say key things that we can become engaged with as people to help us live extraordinary lives in the midst of ordinariness, right? And the first one is to demonstrate leadership in any space that you find yourself. So whether that space be at work, whether it be at church, even within the context of your family, the street where you live, the neighborhood where you live, a club or a voluntary organization that you may belong to, you can exercise leadership where required. It doesn't require you to have a title. It doesn't require people to refer to you with any particular label. But it means that you understand who you are, you understand your role, you understand your strengths, you even understand your weaknesses. And as a result of that self-understanding, that more or less strengthens you. That knowledge strengthens you and places you in a position to be able to lead others and to also self-lead, because we always hear that to be a leader you need to be a follower, and I believe in followership, but at the same time you also need to have a fair set of self-regulation and be able to regulate your own self so that you can be the best leader that you can be. The second point is provide mentorship. Be willing to provide mentorship for troubled or misguided people. I say youth in the book, but it might just be people your age as well, in your communities, wherever those communities are located. Be willing to mentor others. Be willing to be a listening ear for others. Show up for other people. Don't just think about yourself and how you will look good in the moment, how you will get the recognition. No, but show up for others. And I often say, where there's no lights, camera, or action. And when you are motivated from the heart and you're motivated from a very good space, people will know and people will connect with you. And as a result of that connection, you're each going to see growth in your own lives. Make family life a priority by spending quality time with your family, whatever your family looks like. So if you're married, you have spouse and children, or you just have a spouse for this time, or your children have grown up and left home, or you have an extended family, make them a priority, because our family is our primary space where we learn love, where we learned care, where we learned responsibility. And even if it was not a positive space, because sometimes family life can be very challenging and it may not be a positive space for all of us, but even if it was not a positive space for you, there's still the need to forgive. There's still the need to extend forgiveness even for those family members that may have failed you. And in the space you're located now, if your parents are older, they're elderly, or even if there's been tension in the relationship over the years, or there's been tension in the relationship among you and your siblings, bringing peace to those spaces where you can, extending forgiveness, even if the relationship itself does not change or improve, extending forgiveness to family members that have hurt you, puts you in a better space and allows you to grow and develop in ways you wouldn't if you held on to bitterness. So it's very, very important in terms of bringing extraordinary to the ordinary. This is an area in terms of family. I believe in whole life development. I say this a lot. And while I work in an area of leadership and I see myself as a leader, I believe that how I live and lead with my family should impact how I lead and live in other spaces. I don't see them as separate. I know there are people who might say, oh, she's a good boss or he's a good boss, but he can't get along with his children, or he can't get along with his wife, or he can't get along with his significant other, or he disrespects his parents. I see that as being problematic. And I think that when we understand the culture in our home and we understand the culture in our extended family communities, or even the communities where we live, and we're able to input positively, we can bring that to any environment, to any workspace, or any club or anything. So I see life as very, very interconnected and weaving seamlessly through the different I won't say lives that we have, but you understand what I mean, the various spaces where we live our lives. I think that there should be common threads. Yes, I might be a different person at work to how I am at home, but at the same time, in some respects, but at the same time, I think my strengths should shine wherever I am. no matter what I'm doing or what I'm called, my strengths should shine. So if I bring it home to myself, my strength as a wife, my strength as a mother, my strength as an organizer in my own family is a strength that I take to any space that I'm in. You know, whether it's an initiative I'm developing at the community level, whether it's a charity or a project I'm leading at the community level, or even if it is something that I'm leading at work, a charge I'm leading at work, I bring those same qualities to every single space. And that is what I'm talking about, striving for authenticity across our various spaces. Practice giving of your time and resources to worthwhile community causes or clubs. Initiate a neighborhood community project which in some way improves the lives of others. So if you notice about these points I'm making about bringing extraordinary to the ordinary, a lot of it is about stepping outside of ourselves and not thinking so much about ourselves and what's in it for us, but looking at what's in it for other people. And that's the trajectory that my life is on and has been on for quite some time. And as I grow, as I get older, as I get wiser, as I get better, I say it is a trajectory I want to continue to be on, where I am not just all about Denise. There's nothing wrong with wanting good for yourself or wanting to improve your life or wanting to, there's nothing wrong with that. And I've said this time and time again, there's nothing wrong with it, okay? But I think we are at another level when we can pay it forward and not just see what's in it for us, but how we can really be a blessing, a source of blessing to other people. Value yourself. Now listen to this one. This one is huge. Value yourself by refusing to allow abuse in your life. Where you can, demonstrate strength by walking away from abusive relationships. Where this does not seem like an immediate option, seek the assistance of a human services professional to assist you in handling the challenges. Value yourself by walking away from abuse in your life. Yeah, I have to breathe out. That abuse could be in your marriage. That abuse could be in a parental relationship. That abuse could be in a workspace, because there are toxic work environments. It could be any space where you spend a lot of time and the relationship with you and the others around you isn't the best. Sad to say, it is even in churches. I know of people who have been abused, quote unquote, in churches based on how they have been treated by leaders or by other members of the same church. And these things shouldn't happen, but they do, because we're living with fallen humanity. We are all fallen. We're not perfect ourselves. So we as well sometimes need to turn the mirror inward and see where we may also be abusive in our behaviors to others, even though we might balk at the idea of saying, well, I am abusive. But the reality is sometimes we demonstrate behaviors that are less, they're not the preferred behaviors. So value yourself by refusing to allow it. Now, how does one refuse to allow abuse? By standing up for yourself. You stand up for yourself. You articulate to those around you or to your abusers what you don't want in your life, what you're not going to tolerate. You might speak it, you might write it if talking to them face to face is difficult. Or you may actually decide to leave the space. You may decide to leave a very abusive marriage. You may decide to leave a job where you feel abused. People aren't just going to up and leave their job unless they have some other option. But you understand what I'm saying. It may be unhealthy for you to keep being in an abusive environment, because you may find that it is impacting on your sense of self. It is impacting on your health. It's impacting on your well-being. And actually, I've read a couple of articles that have been looking at things like this and knowing when it's time to leave a job because it's damaging your health, knowing when it's time to leave a marriage. Everybody might not want to just run and get divorced. They may want to separate for a while to think things through, to seek counseling, to seek help. But the point is, you understand your worth and your value. And it's not about pride. It's not about prideful behavior, but it's about understanding who God has created you to be, your sense of purpose, your sense of worth, your sense of value, and not allowing that to be destroyed by anyone else. And needing to be assertive, needing to make decisions about how you're going to show up in any space that you're in, how you are going to speak up for yourself, how you're going to set boundaries, emotional boundaries. Sometimes you have to actually set physical boundaries just to preserve your own sanity and your own life, So making that type of decision about refusing to allow abuse is something that's very critical. And it's an important part of bringing extraordinary to the ordinary. Because when you think of bringing anything extra to any space that you're in. You can't bring it if you're debilitated. You can't bring it if you are emotionally traumatized. You can't bring it, not if you're dwelling in that space all the time. You have to begin to experience healing. And as I've said in other fora, the reason why sometimes I can talk about things I've been through, the reason why I can talk about a painful childhood, or I can talk about abuse, or I can talk about, challenging areas of my marriage and so on in the early years, is because I have been healed. I have reached out, I have been helped, I have been blessed by others who poured into my own life, my counselors, my close friends at the time, in terms of things that I was journeying through. There are people that inputted into me, that have allowed me, that have shaped me, and I've read a lot. I've been always an information grabber, so I've exposed myself to a lot of information that has helped me to be who I am today, and I continue to expose myself to that type of information. Do not be ensnared by today's common practice of overachievement. Now, this is one that I wrote, but it is one that I also have to hold in tension for my own life, because the type of personality that I am a high achiever. I love to achieve. I am an idea generator. I love to come up with things. I love to think of things to develop. I sometimes people are sleeping at night and I'm up thinking of things, or ideas are popping up into my head. That is sometimes what happens to creatives, and I'm a creative person through and through. So ideas will always be coming to my head, things I can do, projects I can lead, projects I can develop, and I've been like this for years, And but even with that, if you're like me, or near me in that respect, even with something like that, we still have to be careful to not put ourselves in a space where we become overstressed, because there's so much that's on our plate. So while it's good to want to achieve things, if you read any of my profiles online, you might see one that says, I describe myself as a Renaissance woman who doesn't know quite what she wants to be when she grows up. And I'm saying that now still. There's nothing wrong with having multiple talents or multiple areas. There's so many professional areas that I could have gone into other than what I do right now as an educator, as an academic. There are other areas I could have easily gone into as well. So you might be multi-skilled, you might be multi-talented, you might be multi-blessed to have abilities to weave yourself in and out of various spaces with various skills and talents, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But don't allow yourself to become so bogged down by activity and achieving so many things at the same time that you're worn out and you're tired. Because when you're worn out and you're tired, you cannot bring your best game to any space, really. And you still have your personal life to take care of, which is critical. That's why I made that point earlier about not neglecting your family, your spouse, your children. That's a non-negotiable. So there's nothing that I will do in this life that will make me neglect my family. Nope. My family is of critical importance to me. My husband is of critical importance to me. The health of my family. I have aging parents, taking care of them, being there for them, being there for my children, who are all adults, but they will still need us at times, even though they're adults. Being there for people who you value and who value you is a very important thing. So that point pairs well with this point about not overachieving and allowing yourself, even though you might want to have it all and do it all, still prioritize. Don't wear yourself too thin, because then you won't be as of value. And as we often say, you can't pour from an empty cup. So make sure that you spend some quality time pouring into yourself, taking care of yourself, because that is going to help you and strengthen you and empower you. You will become empowered, as you do those things, so that you can really bring extraordinary to the ordinary. And that actually leads me right into my last point. It says here, seek to deepen the quality of your own life by working on your spiritual, emotional, and physical well-being. If you're going to bring extraordinary to the ordinary, you have to take care of you. So this hammers home what I said just now. Take care of your spiritual life. You're not just here by chance. You've been created by a God who loves you, who has a plan and a purpose for your life. Connect with him so that you can connect with that purpose. Take care of your emotional well-being. Forgive those you need to forgive. Don't allow people to take it right in your head. People that might have hurt you, situations that might have not gone the way you wanted them to go. Do not allow anyone or any situation to dictate your happiness. You are worth so much more. You're not perfect. They're not perfect. And when you have that perspective on humanity, you can extend grace and compassion to anyone, because people aren't perfect and people will make mistakes. And some of those mistakes will involve you and they will hurt you. I've experienced that for sure. But I always live my life and I pray and I ask God to always help me to extend forgiveness, to extend grace, to extend compassion to others, because I am not perfect myself. So when you live in that space of compassionate understanding, of being willing to forgive, of not allowing bitterness to erode your life and take residence in your heart, then you are a freer person, and you are freer to be healthier. You're freer to be more beautiful. People will see radiance emanating from you. It's not about your physical beauty per se, although I believe in taking care of how you look as well. But it's about a presence that you have, that nothing and no one, a joy that God gives to you as you extend forgiveness to others that no one can rob you of. No one can rob you of, because you know who you are and you know whose you are. And when you walk into that space, you're going to live a life of abundance. Abundance is not about money. Yes, money does help us to live abundantly because we can go places and do things and spend weekends in hotels and travel when we want to, and do that spa treatment and buy those new clothes that help us to feel good. Those are good external things that we can do when we have money. But abundance is not first about money. Abundance is a mindset. Abundance is a mindset. It's a mindset. It's about understanding your worth, your value to you, to God. As women, I want women to connect with this, but this truth is very much so for men as well. So what I'm talking about here applies to you, whether you're a woman or a man. But I create this space, this podcast, mostly for women. So don't forget, pour into yourself, release all the negative feelings and experiences that you may have had. Extend grace, extend compassion, be self-compassionate as well. Connect with your master, your maker, who understands you better than anyone else. So thank you so much for joining me for this edition of the Butterfly Chronicles. Remember, we're reading and exploring thoughts and ideas from my book, Tonight I Am a Butterfly, Celebrating Seasons of Change. And I encourage you to walk into your seasons of change. And again, happy International Women's Day. No matter when you see this podcast, happy International Women's Day. Enjoy the month of March as a time for growth and development. And I will see you next time. Blessings.